I think it's fair to say that the brand of Star Wars has lost some degree of its luster in recent years. The franchise is not exactly in its best place at the moment. Now, obviously, I think we can agree that the downward trajectory started with the sequel trilogy series, which, beyond giving us uninteresting new characters like Rey, for example, it killed off all three of the core original characters, Luke, Han, and Leia. Just unbelievable. And we didn't even get all three of those characters on screen at the same time, which I think was a massive missed opportunity. And then when it came to the recent Star Wars TV series, they ranged wildly in quality. The best of them, I think, being Andor and the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. Of course, Andor was built on the solid foundations of the only decent Star Wars film made in the last decade, which was Rogue One. The rest of the Star Wars TV series were a mixed bag. There was potential in there for sure, but I think there was just way too much emphasis on prequels and focusing on retreading of old ground and, recycling the lore all over again. It was like the franchise couldn't move forward, couldn't move on from the events of the first three films. To make matters worse, The Acolyte was an absolute low point for the franchise, so much so that it had to be cancelled after its first season. The Mandalorian started off strong, but declined in quality by season 3, and yet, we're about to get a movie based on that series. A major motion picture I think that fans probably aren't all that interested in seeing. The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, I've already discussed the first trailer, and it looked like a trailer for a new season of the show, rather than standing out as a big cinematic installment of Star Wars. And to make matters worse, a new big game teaser was released a few days ago. It's 36 seconds long. This is it, basically. The two characters being pulled along in the snow in what looks like some kind of cartoonish commercial. It just looks bad. The CG looks terrible. I mean, who thought this was a good idea? In contrast, Xfinity had a great big game commercial that was a tie-in to the original 1993 Jurassic Park movie, and it was just brilliant. It was a comedic what-if about what would have happened if everything had gone fine at Jurassic Park and the dinosaurs hadn't gotten loose, and they brought back the original actors, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and Jeff Goldblum, and they de-aged them. It's a great piece. It's quite fun, and it's brilliantly put together. People seem to love it, and that's just a Wi-Fi commercial. Incorporating a film that came out 30 years ago. And it's way better than this pointless Mandalorian and Grogu teaser. Again, who thought that this was a good idea? And I find myself asking that same question when it comes to several Star Wars projects over the past few years. I don't think fans were all that interested in a film that was going to be a spin-off of The Mandalorian. And as good as that first season was, I don't think it was strong enough as a series to base a movie on. But I think this movie is very illustrative of what I've described in the past as pretty much the biggest issue that Star Wars has as a franchise, which is that it feels like there's a lack of creative direction and an uncertainty as to where to take the franchise, where to go with it next. And I can't understand the logic of greenlighting a movie based on a series that peaked in its first two seasons and that really wasn't big enough or important enough to warrant a big screen outing. Perhaps I'm wrong. Maybe The Mandalorian is exactly the kind of idea that deserves a movie. Maybe it's just what the franchise needs. I don't think so, though, because I'm not seeing a huge amount of excitement for this movie online. The comments are not great. And as I've said, the first teaser trailer just looked like a trailer for a new season of the show, like season 4. That's what it looks like. And I think some people watching that trailer would be forgiven for believing that The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be a new series, as opposed to a brand new Star Wars movie. But ultimately, this big game teaser is baffling to me. I mean, look at the state of this image. It's just really low quality CG. It looks more like a video game cutscene than a big budget movie. Fair enough if this film doesn't interest someone like me, but every promotion matters. Every trailer matters for a movie. And this really undersells it. Who is this going to entice to want to go and see the film? I mean, these kinds of visual effects. In fact, after watching this, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was a promo for some kind of new animated Star Wars series rather than a film in the saga. I have to say, this just doesn't feel like a proper commercial for a film. And above all, I think it's the pointlessness of the whole thing that I just find baffling. What were they thinking here? What were they trying to accomplish with this? Why not just release an actual new proper trailer for the film? Instead, they spent money on this. And this would have cost a few $1 million to make. What a waste. What a complete and utter waste of time and money. I mean, it doesn't tell us anything interesting about the plot. It doesn't showcase the movie and the characters in any meaningful way. It's just a voiceover with the characters being pulled along in the snow by tauntauns. If this clip was meant to build any anticipation or excite audiences, I think it failed miserably. So, in my view, this is a setback in terms of the marketing for this film. And so the next proper trailer is going to have to be something very significant, something very special indeed. Not that I think that'll be enough to generate much interest at this point, especially considering how much the brand of Star Wars has declined in recent years. What's extraordinary about the whole Mandalorian and Grogu thing is that this feels like the first Star Wars film where you can truly sense the apathy among the fan base. Just the feeling of couldn't care less. There was something truly must-see about something like Rogue One. Even The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, for all their flaws, at least there was some buzz about them. Obviously, there was a lot of buzz about the first film in the sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens. Now, I don't think that the sequel trilogy were great movies or anything, but people were talking about them at least in very significant numbers. But this film is coming out in May. This film is coming out in 3 months. And it's easy to forget that. Where's the excitement for this film? It's just incredible. I think this is going to be a huge box office failure because I just don't think that this is a Star Wars film that fans were looking for. But anyway, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates. Hit that like button. Share the video out there. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.